how do you know, get somebody to come on board? It seems like often if you just throw the facts at them and just throw out the data, that's not enough. So why is that? Why do you think it's so important that you're crafting a story around that versus letting, as we like to say, the facts speak for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, often we say this, we get excited. We can see that with clarity that the data is valuable. I think there's some things we have to think about from the audience perspective. We need to make sure that we're aligned with what's important to them. If we're doing an analysis for a department and we're trying to help them make some decisions, do we clearly understand what their goals are? Do we understand what objectives, what are they trying to achieve this year, this quarter? And make sure that when we're sharing data stories, when we're sharing insights, that they're relevant and meaningful to those audience. I mean, that's one of the first mistakes we can make. We can get really excited about maybe something we found in the data, but we're sharing it with the wrong audience. They're not focused on that. That's not one of their key priorities. They're looking over here and we're looking over there. And that's a first disconnect. And then in terms of just getting people, I think a lot of things that financial professionals are looking for is engagement and buy-in. When you're sharing information, you want to get that engagement and buy-in. Well, a table of numbers, 100 rows and maybe 30 columns is not the tool to get engagement. It's the recipe to put people to sleep.
It's to get a glassy-eyed look.
Yeah, exactly. And we want to make sure that we get buy-in. And so often, the interesting thing when I started studying the psychology behind data storytelling, now this is something that I felt like nobody really looked at when I saw the other authors who touched on this topic. I got really curious because I wanted to understand why do our brains react differently to narrative as opposed to facts? And there's a number of different factors involved, but one of the key things is that when we tell a story, we activate cortisol in the brain of our audience. And that, if you know what cortisol is, it's a stress hormone. And what does that do? It gets their attention. They're listening. They're trying to follow where the story's going. So that's released into their bloodstream. The other thing that's released when they did their studies and found that oxytocin is being released into the bloodstream when they're hearing a story. Now, what is oxytocin? Well, it's a kind of like an empathy hormone where your audience is now much more amenable to acting on what you're sharing because you've put it in a story format. You're touching those emotions. You're triggering that release of those two hormones, which are beneficial to getting that engagement and that buy-in. And in getting their awareness and their attention. I think those are all things that finance professionals, analytics, data professionals, we all want people to pay attention to us and we want our messages to resonate. And how do we get that is when we tell a story and start to take advantage of those things that are happening in people's brains that help us to communicate better and get our messages across more strongly than we would with just dumping a bunch of data on their lap.